Hi friends, I'm Parviz and welcome to my another video on building a Flask web app with AWS services. So now what you'll learn in this course, or we can say in this video, you'll learn about the basic and fundamental concepts of Flask. After that, you'll learn that how you can add Amazon RDS or Amazon Relational Database Service to your Flask web application. After that, we will learn about Amazon Elastic Beanstalk, and we're going to deploy our Flask web app to Elastic Beanstalk. After that, we will learn that how you can use code pipeline with Elastic Beanstalk. And at the end, we are going to add a custom domain name using Amazon Route53 to our Flask web app. And also, we are going to secure our Flask web app using Amazon Certificate Manager. So now let's check that what we are going to build. So before starting our main topic, alongside with creating free courses on YouTube, I'm adding quality courses on Udemy. So if you're interested on those courses, for example, one of them is Amazon Web Services with Python and Boto 3, that's 24 hours training course. You can join this course. I have added the link in the video description, and there are different concepts that you learn with AWS and also Python. So now this is the simple application that we want to build. You can see that we have a custom domain name, and also that's the project is deployed in Elastic Beanstalk. The connection is secure. So for example, we can just add a book, and I can just say, for example, test. We can add an author test. We can just add a price, and we can just add this, and you can see that's added. And also we have a flash message, and you can see the test is added. We can just update this. Now, this data is saved in Amazon RDS or Relational Database Service. We are using MySQL instance. So for example, I can just say updated, and I can just update, and you can see that's updated, and you can see the flash message, book is updated. Also, we can delete this. For example, we can just click on delete. Okay. And now that's deleted. If I refresh this, you can see that we don't have this. Okay, so now in the simple project, you will learn, as I've already mentioned, different concepts from building basic concepts of Flask to working with AWS services and features. So now let's start our course. When it comes to Python programming language, there are different options that you can use for building web applications. Now, one of those options are Flask. Now, first of all, what's Flask? Flask is a micro web framework that is used for building web applications in Python programming language. Now, when we are saying that Flask is a micro web framework, it does not mean that you cannot build complex applications, complex web applications using Flask. But Flask by itself is a micro web framework, but you can use, for example, extensions and libraries that are available for the Flask, and you can make your web application more complex. For example, if you're using ORM functionalities, then you can use Flask SQL Alchemy. Or if you're using, for example, forms inside Flask, then you can use Flask WTF. So now like this, you can use extensions in Flask. Let's install Flask. We are going to install Flask, and also we will create our first Hello World web app using Flask. So now I'm using PyCharm ID. Now the first thing is that you need to create a project in PyCharm ID. You can just go to the file, new project, and from here you need to just choose the name of the project. And after that, we want to create a virtual environment. You can just choose this, and you need to choose your Python version, and you can just click on create. Your project will be created. Now make sure that you give a name for the project, and after that you can just click on create, and your project will be created. So after that, you can just use terminal inside PyCharm ID. So you can see that at the bottom we have terminal. We can just click on this, and now you can see that by default the virtual environment is activated in my PyCharm ID, and now I can directly install Flask. So I can just use pip. So pip install Flask, hit enter, and it will take a little bit for the installation. So now that's installed, and it's installing the Flask. Okay, so now Flask is installed. After installation of the Flask, now we want to create our first Hello World web app using Flask. The first thing is that we want to create a Python file. You can just right click new Python file, and I can just call it app.py file. After that, the first thing that we need to import our Flask in here, and I can just say from Flask import Flask. And after importing of the Flask, now we need to create our route. So first you need to create your route, and after that you need to create your view function. Okay, and now I can just say at app.route. So okay, so first we need to create our instantiate our Flask, and after that we can just create our route. So I can just say app Flask __ name we can pass, and now we can just use as at app.route, and for example we want this should be index, okay, or slash. Now we can create our view function, and I can just say diff index, and this is our index route, and in the index what I want to do, I want to just return hello world. So I can just say return hello world. So now we have installed Flask, we have imported the Flask, we have instantiated the Flask, we have created our route, and we have created our view function, and in there we are just returning a hello world text. Okay, now what we need to do, we need to just run our development server because we want to test this, that it is working or not, and I can just say __ main. And inside the Flask app, you can just use app.run. And if you are, for example, in development mode, you can just make the debug to true. Okay. In the production level, you can just make it, you can just remove that. Okay. So now if I just run this, okay, so right now you can see we have all things that are set up. And now if I just run this, you can just right click, and after that you can just click on run. So now in here you can see that we have starting with state, debugger is active, and that's because we have debugged it true. And now you can see that we have a running so server Flask app, and this is the developer server. Do not use it in the production deployment. And now if I just click on this, you can see that we have our hello world. Now for example, if you change this to something more, and welcome to the course, for example, and if I just save it, and now it will automatically be refreshed, and if I just refresh this, you can see that we have that in here. In the previous lesson, we have created our simple web app, simple hello world web app using Flask. In this lesson, we want to talk about the Flask template, or how we can use templates inside a Flask. So right now you can see that we have our Flask web app, and it's returning just hello world text, and if we see, we have our hello world. Now for example, if you want to build a complete web application, now it's not a good idea to use a lot of things inside here. Even for example, in here you can use h1 tag. For example, we can just say h1 tag, and if I just save it, and if I just refresh it, you can see that we have hello world. But it's not the idea that we want to use. For example, for building a complete web application, you'll have HTML files, you will have templates that you can easily use them. So now the first thing is that we need to create a template for this index view function, and we want to name it index.html. But this index.html should be inside templates folder. Now make sure we want to create a folder at name of templates, and that should be in here. Okay. So now I could just say templates, so templates, and after templates, now inside this templates, you can create your HTML files. So for example, the first one is HTML, and I can just call it index. Okay, so now we have our index.html, and now inside this index.html, let me change the title to, for example, home, and in the body we want to just give an, for example, h1 tag, so welcome to the course. And now we have this index.html. How we can just show this in this view function instead of this text? Now there is something that's called render template, and we can use that from Flask. And I need to import the render template, and in here I can just render template, so I can just say render template, and there are different options that you can use in here. Some of them are required and some of them are not required. For example, the required option is the template name, the HTML file name or the template name that you need to give it in here. And the optional, for example, parameters are, for example, if you want to send some data from this view function to this HTML file, then you can use that. So we will talk about that when we have fetched our data using from the database. But right now, to render this index.html, we need to just add that in here. So I can just say index.html. Okay. So now you don't need to give templates index.html because Flask knows about this templates that we have, and it will target that. So now if I just save it and if I just refresh it, so you can see that we have welcome to the course, and that's working. So it's working. We have our HTML file. You can create another HTML file according to your project. Okay. Now the problem is in here. Right now we have just one HTML file and there is no problem. Now in a complete more complex project, maybe you'll have more templates. Now in every template or in every HTML file, writing these HTML tags are not a good idea because we are repeating the codes in here. Now there is something that's called template inheritance and Flask that you can use. So now what we need to do, we want to create a base.html in here. So we are going to write our base skeleton of HTML in there, and after that we can extend that base.html in our other HTML files. So now let me show you that what I mean. For example, in here I want to create another HTML file, and I can just call it base.html file. And in the base.html file, by the help of the blocks, we can create blocks in here. So for example, we want to create one block for the title. That should be for the title. So block title, and in here I can just end the block. So when you create a block, make sure to end the block. You can create more blocks, but in here in my project requirement, we need just 2 blocks, one for the title and one for the body. And I can just say block body, and I need to end the block. Okay, so end block. So now we have our base.html and we have 2 blocks in there. Now we can easily use this template. So we don't need these HTML files in here. What we need to just extend from base.html. So base.html, and after that we can use the blocks that we have created. So for example, we have one block for the title, and I can just name it home. We can end the block. We have one block for the body, so block body, and we can end the block. Now inside the block body, we can just write our body. So let me create an h1 tag. Welcome to Flask and AWS course, and also we can just create a p tag in here, and I can just say please subscribe my channel and like the video. Let's save it and let's check it. So now you can see that we have our text in here, welcome to Flask and AWS course, and also we have our p tag. Now I can create, for example, more HTML files, and I can just extend from the base.html. I can give, for example, the title, and after that I can just write the body. We already have learned about some basic and fundamental concepts on Flask. Now let's start our database programming, and we're going to talk about the Flask SQL Alchemy. So first of all, what's Flask SQL Alchemy? Now Flask SQL Alchemy is an extension for Flask that adds support for SQL Alchemy to your application. It simplifies using SQL Alchemy with Flask by setting up common objects and patterns for using those objects, such as session type to each web requests, models, and also engines. So now let's install Flask SQL Alchemy and let's practically work with that. Now this is my Flask project. The first thing is that I need to install Flask SQL Alchemy. So I can just say pip install, and I can just say Flask SQL Alchemy and hit enter, and it will be installed. After doing that, we need to add configuration. Okay, now when you're using Flask SQL Alchemy, there are different database options that you can use. For example, you can use SQLite, you can use MySQL, you can use Postgres. Now in this lesson, we are going to use MySQL, and particularly in this course, we can say we're using MySQL database. And for right now, we are using WAMP server, but we will change this to Amazon RDS or relational database service. Okay, now we'll talk about the RDS more. Now it's a relational database service from the Amazon that you can create different DB instances like MySQL, Postgres, or like these databases. We will change this, but for right now, for testing purpose, we're using WAMP server. And after completing of our project, we are going to just migrate to Amazon RDS or relational database service. So now so the first thing is that we need to create a database, and I can just, I have opened my WAMP server. I can click on new, and for example, I can just name it Flask AWS. Okay, so Flask AWS, and let's just click on create database. So right now we don't have any table in this Flask AWS. After doing that, we need to add our configuration. Okay, so now if you see, if I show you for the configuration, so you can see that there are different ways that there are different configuration for different databases. So if you're using SQLite, you can use this, but if you're using MySQL, you can just use this. So I'm going to just copy this, and after that I can just open my app.py file, and in here the first thing is that we need to install that, we need to import that from Flask SQL Alchemy. We want to import SQL Alchemy, and after doing that, in here we need to create our configuration. So I can just say app.config, and I can just say, so SQL Alchemy database URI, and in here we can just paste this. Okay, and for the database URI, so we are using MySQL, and we need to change this to root, the username. So the username is root. We don't have any password for this, and we can just make it like this. Now this is localhost, now this is the server. We will change this with the RDS servers, but right now we are using localhost, and the database name is what was it was Flask AWS. Flask AWS. Okay, and after that also we need to just add another configuration. So I can just say app.config, and I can just say SQL Alchemy underscore track underscore modifications, so modifications, and I can just make this to false. Okay, so now we have added our database configuration. After that, what we need to do, we need to add that to the Flask, and I can just say SQL Alchemy, and I can just say app. Okay, so after doing this, right now if you see we don't have any table in our database, what we need to do, we want to create a table. Okay, or we can say we want to create a model. Okay, and basically models are classes, Python classes that we can use that extends from the db.model. So for example, I want to just create a class book, and it extends from db.model, and after that I want to just give the ID in here, and I can just say db.column. So you need to give the type, that's db.integer, and the primary key is true. Okay, primary key true. After that, we need to give the title. We will have a title for the book, so db.column, and it should be a type of string, and we want to give the 100 characters, and also for example it should be nullable to false. It means that we want that field. And let's just also we want to create one for the author, so author, it should be string, and one for the price, and I can just make a db, for example, dot float. So price db.column db.float. Okay, So now after doing this, after creating of this model, let's just also create our init in here. So underscore init, and here I need to pass the title. I don't need the ID because ID will be created automatically. I need the author and also I need the price. Okay, and now I can just say self.title to title and self.author to the author and self.price to the price. Okay, so now we also need to, because we are using MySQL database, we need to install another library that's called MySQL client. But if we're not using MySQL, for example, you're using SQLite, for SQLite you don't need to install anything, and for the Postgres you need to install another library, but for the MySQL we can use MySQL client. So I can just say pip install MySQL client. Okay, so the MySQL client has been installed. After doing that, what we want to do, we want to just open Flask shell, and we need to our this table. Okay, so right now we have just the model in here, but that's not added in our database. So I can just say Flask shell, and after that hit enter. So now in the Flask shell, the first thing that we need to just import. So I can just say from app, I want to import DB. Okay, so from this file, I want to import this DB. Okay, and after doing that, what we want to do, we want to do db.createAll. So db.create underscore all, hit enter. Okay, so now that's created, and if I check my Flask AWS, you can see that the book table is created with the fields ID, title, author, and price. Okay, now this is working. After doing that, now let's just add some data using the Flask shell. And for example, I can just say book. I don't need to add the ID because that will be automatically created. So title Python. We want the author, for example, the author. We can just give an author in here. And also we can just give a price, for example 20. Okay, after that hit enter, and now we can just say db.session.add, and we want to add the b, and also we need to commit. So db.session.commit, hit enter. So now if I check, you'll see that I have my first data in here. So if I just go to the Flask AWS, if I go to the book, and now we have our first data. So now let's add another data. So I can just say book, and I can give the title. So for example, Flask, author, and price. db.session.add. You want to add the b, and also we need to commit. So db.session.commit. And now if I check, you'll see that I have another data. So we have two data. Also, you can select the data. Let's just select the data. For example, in here, I can just say book underscore data, and I can just QD that. So book.qd.all. And now if I say book data, we have two data, and now I can iterate that. So for book and book data, and in here we can just print, for example, I want the title, so print book.title, and now we have the title in here. Also you can update the data if you want. For example, I can just say updated, so updated, and let's just say book.qd.filter underscore by. I want to filter according to the ID. So for example, I want to get the ID one, and I want to update that. So dot first, and if I say updated, you can see that we have the ID one, and now I want to change the title. So updated dot title to, for example, updated, and we need to just say db dot session dot commit. Okay, so now if I check this, you will see that now the first ID is updated, the title is updated. Also, you can delete the data, so I can just say delete it and book.qt.filter underscore by, and I can just pass id to one dot first. And after that, if I say delete it, we have the deleted data, and now we can just easily delete this. So db.session.delete. We want to delete it, and db.session.commit. So now if I check this, Flask AWS book, and now we have just one data. In the previous lesson, we have learned about the Flask SQL Alchemy, and also we have added some data, and also we have learned that how we can work with MySQL database and also Flask. Now, in this lesson, what I want to do, I want to show my data from my database, from my MySQL database to the HTML file that I have. So now let's do that. So right now, if you see, we have some dummy data in our index page. Now, if you see, we have a data in the database. Now we want to fetch this data from the database, and we want to show that in our index.html. But before that, because we're using Bootstrap, and you need to just go to the getbootstrap.com, and from here we can just copy the links. So this is for the CSS. I can just copy that, and the best place is the base.html because we're extending from that, and I can just paste that in here. Okay, and also we need the JavaScript bundle, so let me just copy that, and we can just add that at the bottom. Okay, and here. So now after doing that, we want to open our app.py file, and in here in this section, the first thing is that we need to query over the book, so using SQL Alchemy. So we already have learned using the Flask shell, so I can just say books, and I can just say book.query.all. So now we have all the books from our database, and now we can send these books to this index.html, and we can just do that like this. Okay, so I can just say books and books. Okay, so now we have books, and now we can access that inside the index.html. So I'm going to open my index.html, and I don't want this text because now I want to use the data from my database. So we need to use some Bootstrap styles. For example, first we are going to create a div class container, so container, and after that in here we are going to create a table, so table, and I can give you a class. So for example, so these are Bootstrap classes that I'm going to use, and also I can just hit table stripped, and it should be table hover. Okay, so now inside this, let me just create a table header, and after that let's just create table row, and let me create a th, and inside that, for example, we have id, we have title, so title, and also we have the author, and we have the price. Okay, so now after that we need to create our t-body in here, and let me just say t-body, and in the t-body we are going to just use for loop, and we want to iterate our data that we have. So in here I can just say for book in books. Now the books, this is that we have used in here. Okay, so I can just say for book in books, and also you need to end the for loop in here, so we can just say end for loop, and now in here we can just use tr. Inside tr we can create our td, and we want to show the data. So first we want to use book dot id, and let's create another td, and for this I can just say book dot title, and we have book dot author, so td, and we have book dot author, and the last one is the price, and so td book dot price, book dot price. Okay, And also we need two buttons because we will use that for editing or deleting the books. And also we want to create that in here. We will need that. So I can just create another TD in here, and inside this TD, let me just create a anchor tag. And for the ref, I want to just leave it empty for right now. And the class is btn. We can just use a bootstrap btn like this. So let me remove this. We don't need this. And also because we will use models, so in here you need to give the target, and also we need to give the toggle and also the target. So now in here I can just say data bs toggle, and also, or for right now we are not going to give this. Okay, so we want to just give a simple button. I don't want to confuse you for right now. It should be update, and let's just create another one, and that should be for the delete. Okay, so I can just change this to danger, so danger, and I can just make it delete. So right now we are done, I think. And if I check this, so let's just go to the home page and let me refresh it. Okay, so now you can see that we have this, but the design is not looking good, and maybe there's a, so right now you can see that we have the data, and that is working, but now we need to check that where is the problem in the bootstrap design. Okay, so we have the container table class, table is stripped, table hover. Let me also give a border in here. It's also good. So let me just give a border, so border 1. So head, th, there's no problem. T-body, and then the T-body, we have this, and there's no problem. Just the problem is in the actions, and that's because we need to create an action in here. So in the th, and in this section we can just give a call span of 2, so call span of 2, and I can just say actions. Let's save it and let's refresh it. Okay, so now it's looking good. And also we can just give a margin top 4. Okay, so now that's looking good. And for the actions, if I remove this call span, let's check that how it's looking. I have removed this empty 4, and let's just remove this. Okay, so we need to give that. We need to give a call span. Okay, so now it's looking good, but there's some space. If I just bring this also in here inside this TD, let's check. Let me remove this one. Let's save it. Okay, so now that's looking good. Okay, so now we have this. We have our first data. Now, for example, if I insert another data, let's just go here, and if I go to the this table, insert, and we don't need the ID. For example, I can just say Flask, the author, and the price, and let's just click on go, and now the data is added. And if I check this, so now we have another data in here, Flask. So we have 2 Flask. Yeah, we had already a Flask in here, but no problem. And now we can see that we have 2 of them, and that is working. In this lesson, we want to add an advert to our Flask web app. So now in here at the top, I want to add an advert, and also this will be a good that you will be familiar with another thing that's called include. Okay, so Now I'm going to first also I will show you that how you can use static files. For example, I will add a logo in there. So for that you need to create another directory, and in here you need to call it static. Okay, so for example, if you have your own CSS, then you can add that in here. Okay, so now I'm going to just paste flask.png logo in here. After doing that in the templates, I'm going to create another HTML file, and I can just call it navbar. And in the navbar, I want to create my navbar. So this should be a bootstrap navbar, and I can just say nav. And so in here, I can create my class. So that's navbar expand LG, and navbar. We need to give the color, so I can just say light, BG light. And we can create a div in here, so div class container, and inside this class container we want to create an anchor tag, and I can just say a class navbar branch, so navbar branch, and we are going to give a ref, so I can just leave it empty, and in here we want to just use our image. Okay, so img now the first thing is that we need to give the source of the image, and so I can just say source is required, and for this we have our static folder and we have added our image in here. Now we can use URL for, and we want to search in the static folder, and the file name is flask.png, so flask.png, and also we need to give some for example, we need to give the alt in here, so I'm leaving empty, or I don't need to give that, but we need to give the width, so 100, and the height 50, and also we need to just use a class from Bootstrap, and I can just give the class in here. I can just say d inline block, and we want to align that to the top of the text. Okay, so if we have a text in here, right now we haven't any text, we have just the logo. So now we have this. After that, now we want to include that in our base.html. For example, in the head, I can just include that, so I can just say for example include, and that is navbar.html. Let's save it and let's refresh it. So now you can see that we have our navbar in here, and also we have our logo, and that is working, okay, in the navbar. In this lesson, we want to work on inserting functionality, but we will not insert the data. We want to just create our design, but it will be a model, a bootstrap insert model. So now let's do that. So now the first thing is that if you see in here, we have our navbar in here. We want to create a button. So for example, add book. To do that, we want to just open our navbar.html, and then here, after the anchor tag, we want to create UL class, and I can just say navbar nav, so navbar nav, and inside that we want to create a button, so button, and we can give the class, so that is btn. For example, we can use a bootstrap class, and I can just say add book. Okay, okay, so there should be an li tag, so li, and we can give the class to nav item, so nav item. So let's remove this from here, and we want to just close it in here. So now if I just save it and if I refresh it, you can see that we have add book. So for example, by clicking off this, we want to just show a bootstrap model. Okay, so now I already have prepared the model, and I want to just copy this and paste it in here. Don't worry, you can just get the source code of this project from the video description. Okay, so now after in the navbar.html, we want to just paste the model. Now I'm going to just describe this model. So now this is the ID, insert model, and this is the class. So this is the role dialog. Okay, and these are some Bootstrap classes. There, if you see the getsbootstrap.com, there are a lot of models. You can just copy one of them and you can just make it according to your choice. So this is the model content, this is the model header. We have the add book header, and after that this is the body. Now this is the form action. Right now we are not doing anything, but after that we have the fields. We have the form group, we have the title, so this is our title, and the input type is text. This is the class form, this is the name is title. Now this is important because we will need this, and require this one. Okay, also we have the author, the same option we have for the author, but make sure to change the name to the author. And we have the same option for the price. Make sure to change the name to the price, and also for the price, input type is number. And this is the button that will be for adding the book, so we can just say add book. Okay, and also we have a footer for the model, and there should be just a button for closing of the model. Okay, so this model footer. So now we have the model. After that, what we want to do, we want to just link this model to our button. So if you see in here, we have a button, and that button is located inside our navbar. So we want to just link this model to this add book button. So we have this in here, this is the button, and now in here we can just use database toggle. So data, not dismiss, but it should be toggle. So toggle, and for that we want it should be model, and also we need to give the target. So database, and we want the target, and for the target we are going to target this model. So if you see, that is the ID is insert model, so we need to just copy that, and we are going to just add it in here. Okay, so like this, insert model. Let's save it and let's check it. Refresh. If I click on add book, so now you can see we have our model, add book, title, author, price, and we have add book, and we have a close, and we can just close that. So now we have our nice model. In the previous lesson, we have learned that how we can create our model. In this lesson, we want to learn that how we can insert our data. So now you can see if I click on add book, you can see that we have a nice model that we can just add the title, author, and the price. And after that, we can just click on add book. Now we want to just, using this form, we want to just insert some books or some data to our this table. So to do that, what we want to do, we want to just open our apps.py file, and in here we want to create another route. So okay, so I can just hit app, so .route, and in here I want it should be add, and after that we can just say methods, and that is post. So I could just say post. So after doing that, now I can just hit div insert underscore book. First I want to check that if request, so if we need to import the request, so from Flask request, and I can check that if request dot method is post. In that case, what we want to do, we want to just instantiate our book with the data. And we can just say title, and I can just say request dot form dot get title, and we have the author request dot form dot author, so dot author, and I can just say author. Okay, it should be get. And also we have the price, so request dot form dot get price. Now after doing that, we already have learned that we can use this session, so db.session.add, and we want to add the book. After that we need to just commit, so db.session.commit, And at the end, after inserting, we want to just redirect. So we are going to use redirect from Flask to the index page. So after inserting the data, so I can just say redirect. I need to import that, and then here I can just say return redirect to the. Also, we need to import the URL for. So URL for. Okay. So now we can just say URL for to the index page. Okay, so to the index page. Now make sure that this index should be the same as this index. For example, if you have uppercase I, then you need to just make it uppercase, because it will not work and it will give you an error. So return redirect URL for index. Okay, now after doing that, what we need to add this insert book in our model. So if I go to the navbar.html, and I have showed you, so we have something that's called form action. Okay, now in here we can just add that, and in this section I can just say, so for example, URL underscore for, and I want to just use the insert book, insert, not model, insert book, sorry, insert book. Let's save it and let's refresh it. So let's just add another book. So for example, Django. We can just give an author, and we can just give a price, add book. So that's added. We have the data. And if I check this table, we have the Django, and that's added. So we have the title, the author, the price. Let's add another one, for example, Python. So the author, so for example, Python, and this is the price. Let's add, and now the Python is also added. Okay, so now that's working and we can add the data. In the previous lesson, we have learned that how we can insert data. Now in this lesson, we want to learn about flash messages in Flask. So right now we can just add or insert data, and there's no problem, it will be added. But what we want, after inserting data, we want to show a flash message in here for the user that, for example, the data is added. So to do that, we can use Flask flash messages. The first thing is that we need to open our app.py file, and in here we need to just import flash. Okay, and after importing of the flash, so after inserting of the data in here, after going to the index page, we want to just say flash, not Flask, but flash, and we need to give the, for example, the message. Okay, so now we have this. Now what we want to do, we want to show this flash messages in our index.html. Okay, so that's the our index page, and we want to show that in here at the top. So in this section, we will give a design for that. So in here, I can just say with messages, and first we need to just say get flashed messages, get flashed messages, and we need to just end the width. So I can just say end width. And after that, I want to check, for example, if messages, and we need to just end the if. So if we have the messages, so end if, on that case, we want to just go through the messages using for loop. So for message and messages, and we want to just end the for, and in here we can just show our message, our flash message. And let's create a div. So div class. Now we can just use an alert, bootstrap alert, and we can just give a role of alert. After that, in here we want to just show the message itself. Let's save it and let's try it. So let me just give AWS. We can give the author, for example. We can give the price like this, and let's click on add book. But before that, we also need to add a secret key. Okay, so if I just click on add book, you can see that the session is unavailable because no secret key was set. Set the secret key on the application to something unique and secret. Okay, so because we are redirecting and we're using a flash message, you can see that the data is added and there's no problem, but we haven't seen the flash message. Now to solve this problem, we could just open our app.py file, and in here we can just add a unique secret key. So I can just say app.secret key, and for example something unique, and I can just give it like this. So let's just save it, and now if I just click on add, and let me just say testing and test 40, add, and now the book added. We have a nice flash message, and also the data is added. In this lesson, we want to learn about updating. Basically, we will create our update model in this lesson, and in the next lesson, we will work on updating functionality. Right now, we have our just basic simple app. For example, when I want to click on update button, I want to see a model with the populated data. So to do that, first you need to open our the index.html. So in here we have our update on and delete buttons, and before the end for loop we want to create our model. So I am going to paste the code, and don't worry, I will add the complete source code in the video description. But let me just describe. We already have talked about the models. For the insert model, so we have our model class is just basically a bootstrap class. Also, you can use models from the getbootstrap.com, and you can just make it according to your choice. So we have the model title, we have the model body, we have a form action that you will need that for updating. We have the title. So also for the title, we need to just use input type heading. We need to give the name ID, and in here we are going to give a value for that, okay? Because we want to just populate the data and we want to populate according to the ID. So I can just say book.id, and then here we want to give a value of book. So book.title, okay? And we can just come down, we have author, and for the author we also need the author. So I can just say book.author, and also for the price we should give value book.price. So now if I just save it, and if I go here and if I click on update, so we are not seeing anything in here, and that's because we also need to target this model, okay? So we have created the model, but we haven't used that model. So let's just go at the bottom, at the top, and this is our button. Now in here we can just target that. So I can just say, so data, we can just give the toggle first, and for the toggle I want it should be model, and also we need the target. So data bs target, and in here we are going to just give an ID for this. So right now I don't have any ID, and I can just say model edit, and also you need to give the book.id, okay, like this. So now after adding this, now we can just use that in here. So we can just use model edit and here, so model edit, and I can just say book.id. So book.id. Let's save it, and now let's refresh it. And if I go to the update, so we have the data in here, and if I go to this one, but also I should see the ID in here, but it's working, there's no problem. We will fix that, but now that's working. And if I click on this one, testing update, so testing test 40, and if I just use the AWS, so the title, the author, and the price, and for example when I click on this, I should see the ID at the bottom. So to solve that in the ref, you could just use for example, we can just say update, and we can use book.id. So book.id. So let's save it, and now you can see that at the bottom we have update ID 3, 2, 4, and this is ID 5, and that's working. And if I just use this Flask or this Flask John, that's working with the Django, that's also working. In the previous lesson, we have learned that how we can create our update model. Now, in this lesson, we want to learn that how we can update our data. So right now you can see that if I click on update button, you can see that we have a model with the populated data. Now we want to work on updating the data. So now the first thing is that we need to create another route. So I can just open my app.py file. And in here we have insert book. Now let's just create another route for updating. So I can just say at app.route, and I can just say update. So and also the methods is I can just say post. So now I can just say diff update, and now first we want to check that if request dot method is post. In that case, first we want to get the specific data, and I can just say my data and book dot query dot get, and we want to get the specific according to the specific ID. So I can just say request dot form dot get, and I can just pass ID in here. So after that, now I can just say my data dot title, and I can just make it to request dot form title, my data dot author, and I can just say request dot form, and I can just say author. Also we have price, so my data dot price, and I can just say request dot form and price. Okay, and after that we need to just say db dot session. We need to just commit, and at the end we also give a flash message that, and also we want to just go to the index page after updating. So we can just say return redirect to the URL4, so URL4 to the index page. Okay, so now after that let's just open our index.html, and after that we want to just go to the update model. So this is our update model, and we have a form action, and in here I can just say URL4, and I need to pass the update in here. Okay, update function. Now let's just save it and let's check it that it is working. So if I click on update, and if I say, for example, Flask updated, and let's just update. So updated, and you can see that's updated, and that's updated. If I check my database, so let me just go here, and if I go to the book, and you can see that's updated. So for example, we can just update this one, so we can just say new book, and we can just say new author, so new author, and we can just give a price to 30 and update, and that's updated. So new book, new author, and the price also updated. So like this you can work on updating functionality. In the previous lesson we have learned about updating the data. Now in this lesson we want to work on the last crowd operation, and that is deleting the data. So now in here, if you see, we have a delete button. Now we want to just work on the deleting. So let's first of all create our delete route. So I can just say diff delete, and I want to delete according to the ID. So I can just say my data, for example, and I need to just get the specific book according to the ID. So I can just say .get, and I can just pass ID. And after that we can just say db.session.delete, and I want to delete my data. And after doing that we need to just commit, so db.session.commit. Also we want to give a flash message that book is deleted, and also we want to just go to the home page, so or index page, return redirect URL4 and index. Okay, so now we need to just go to the index.html because we have the delete button in here, and in this section also we want to just add an on click. We want to just add a JavaScript confirmation in here, so I can just say on click, and in the on click I want to just return, for example, confirm, and I can just say, are you sure to delete? Are you sure to delete? And after that, in the ref and here, we need to just use our view function. So I can just say delete, and we want to delete according to the book.id. Okay, and after that, let's just save it and let's just refresh it. And now if I just click on the Flask updated, let's click on that. Are you sure to delete? Okay, so we have received that requested URL not found. And let's check that where is the problem. Also, that's not deleted. And so we have the delete in here, book.id. Okay, but in app.py, okay, so we need to create our route. I forgot to do that. Sorry for that. And in this section, so this is the delete route. So delete and the methods, and here also we need to give the get like this, get or post. And now let's just save it and let's refresh it. Delete. Okay, again we have method not allowed, but why? So a tab.route. Okay, so delete, and we need to just pass ID. Okay, because we are going to delete according to the ID. So let's now do it once more. Delete. Okay, and now let's delete it. And we have our flash message, and we don't have that in here. So if I delete this one, delete. Okay, and that's also deleted. And that's not. Now we have 4 data, and if I check this, you can see that now we have 4 data. Now delete is also working. Right now our simple web app is working as expected. Now we want to add some more features or services from the AWS. For example, right now if you see we are using a MySQL database and we are using WAM server. Now we want to add Amazon RDS or Amazon Relational Database Service features to our Flask web app. Now, first of all, let's talk about the Amazon RDS, and after that we will go through the configuration. So now if you see the documentation of AWS, Amazon RDS, set up, operate, and scale a relational database in the cloud with just a few clicks. And if you come down, Amazon Relational Database Service or Amazon RDS is a collection of managed services that makes it simple to set up, operate, and scale databases in the cloud. Choose from the 7 popular engines. There are different engines in Amazon RDS that you can use. So we have Amazon Aurora with MySQL compatibility, Amazon Aurora with Postgres compatibility. We have MySQL itself, MariaDB, Postgres, Oracle, and SQL Server. We will use MySQL, and also, for example, when you create your account, now when you're using AWS services, you should have an account in AWS. And when you create an account, there will be a free tier for 1 year. Now, for the Amazon RDS, if you just go to the free tier, so you can see as part of the AWS free tier, the Amazon RDS free tier helps new AWS customers get started with managed database service in the cloud for free. And this is the free tier, 750 hours of Amazon RDS in the single availability zone, and db.t2.micro. So this is the instance, or if that's unavailable, you can use t3.micro or t4.micro if that's not available. Usage running MySQL, MariaDB, and Postgres databases each month, and also 750 hours of Amazon RDS single availability zones instance usage running SQL Server. And also you will receive 20 GB of general purpose SSD DB storage and 20 GB of backup storage for your automated database backups. So now I already have my account in here, so you can just search RDS in here. So you can just search for the RDS or relational database service. Let's just click on that, and we want to just create a relational database service. So let's wait. So now in here, let's just click on create database, and we want to just create our first database engine in Amazon RDS. And you will see the setup, and I will show you that how you can use the free tier, and make sure that choose the free tier. If you choose another, for example, another one, then you will be pay for that. So now in here you can see that first we need to choose a database creation method, and we want to just use with the standard create. And after that you can see that these are the engine types. We have Amazon Aurora, MySQL, MariaDB, Postgres. Now we want to choose the MySQL, so you need to just select the MySQL, and after that you need to just come down. Okay, so this is the addition, MySQL community, and you don't need to touch anything in here. This is the engine version. Now in here you need to choose the templates. Now because we are using free tier, if you use production, then you'll be paid for that. We want to choose free tier. Make sure that you choose free tier. And you can see that when I choose free tier, you can see that these options are disabled because the availability and durability options are available for the production level. Okay, so after that, this is the DB instance identifier, and we want to just give the name. So for example, Flask DB, for example, we can just name it like this. And after that, this is the settings credential. Now this is the username, so we want to just leave it as admin. And also you need to give the password in here. So we want to just give the password and also confirm the password. Okay, so after adding the password, now you can see that this is the instance configuration. Right now we have just one, and this is db.3.micro. This is also available for the free tier, but also you can just use the t2.micro. Now if the t2 and t3 is not available, then you can use the t4.micro, okay, according to their documentation. So you want to choose just this t2.micro. So you can see that we have one vCPUs, 1 GB of RAM, and after doing that, this is the storage type, and this we need to use the general purpose SSD or GP2 because it comes under the free tier, and you'll receive 200 of GB of allocated storage. And I want to just change this to, for example, 10. Okay, not much. And also if you want the auto scaling, you can choose that, but I don't want to enable the auto scaling for my database or for my DB engine. I can just disable that. And after that, you can, this is the VPS, we want to just choose the default one. And also because we want it should be publicly accessible, we can just choose the public, yes, okay. And also if you just come down, you don't need to bring any changes in here like this. And so our setup is done. Also, if you see in the additional configuration, we have the port that's 3306, and we don't want to change that. And now you can see that estimately monthly cost, you can see that we don't have any cost in here because we have chosen the free tier. And we already have talked, the free tier is available to you for 12 months. Each calendar month, the free tier will allow you to use the Amazon RDS resources listed below for free. This amount of RDS and single availability zone, and also 20 GB of general purpose storage, and also 20 GB of automated backup storage. Okay, after that, so after adding this, now we are going to just click on create database, and it will take a little bit to database being created. So right now if I just go here, it's creating, and let's just wait for this. Alright guys, now the DB engine has been created, and if I just click on this, you will see that I have some information about the database. And at the same time, we want to check the connection. So if I come down, you can see that this is the summary. And if I just come down, so we have the connectivity, and also we have the security groups. Now, I have chosen the default security group, and I haven't talked about this, about the security group. So when you, for example, create that, there will be a default security group that will be created. So let me just show you, and let me just show this. So you can see that it has chosen the default security group, the default VPS security group. And in here we have two rules. We have inbound rules and also outbound rules for incoming and outgoing traffic. Okay, so now we can just go back to the Amazon RDS, and here we have that. And let's just check the connection. Okay. So now we have an endpoint in here. I can just choose this, and I'm using MySQL Workbench. Let's just test the connection. And in here, I can just say Flask test, and we can just add the host name. So this is the port, and the username is admin. and we are going to just add our password in here. So I can just say password, and let's click on OK. After that, click on OK. And now let's just click on this. So now in here, if I say show databases, and if I just check it, so now you can see that we have a connection and we have some data in here. Now we have created Amazon RDS, and in the next lesson, we will do our configuration with Flask, our Flask web app. In the previous lesson, we have talked about Amazon RDS, and also we have created our MySQL DB instance. Now in this lesson, we want to add that to our Flask web app. So now the first thing is that we want to just create a database. So in here, I can just say create a database. And if you remember that we had a database, so if I just open this, so this was our database name, Flask AWS. We want to just create this one. So you can just say Flask AWS, and let's just create that. So that's created. And now if I say show database, so show databases, and if I run this, so now you can see that I have Flask AWS. After that, what we want to do, we are going to just open our Flask configuration. So this is Flask AWS, this is MySQL. Now this is at domain, so at domain. And in here, we need to just give the password. Now the password is password, okay. After that, we need to give the host, and we can just grab that from here. So this is the host. I can just copy that. I can just paste it in here, and I think we are done with that. So now what we need to do, we need to just open Flask shell because we want to create our table in here. So right now, if I just say use, so for example, use Flask AWS, and let's just use this, okay. And if I say show tables, and you'll see that I don't have any table in here, so show tables. And if I just run it, so right now we don't have any table, but we want to create our table. So to create the table, we need to just open Flask shell. So Flask shell. After that, hit enter. So now in here, the first thing is that we need to import. So from app import db. After that, I can just say db create underscore all, hit enter. So let's just wait. Okay, so now that's created. Now we have this class book table in our Amazon RDS. So now if I just say show tables, and if I just run this, you will see that now I have the book table in here. Now that's created. And right now we don't have any data. Now, for example, if I refresh this, you'll see that now I'm not seeing any data in here because now we have a new database, okay, with the table. So that's not, we don't have anything. Let's just add a book. So I can just say AWS, I can just add the author, and also I can just add the price, for example, like this, add book. And let's wait. So that's added. But this time, this is added to the Amazon RDS. Let's just add another one. For example, Flask. You can just add an author in here, and we can just add a price. So like this, add book. And now we have ID2, and that's added. So if I just go here, so for example, if I say select all from book, and so now if I just run this, and now you can see that we have two book with ID1, ID2, the title, the author. So like this, we have integrated Amazon RDS feature to our Flask web app. So now let's push our Flask project to GitHub. Now, before pushing the data, we need to just bring some changes. Now, the first one is that we are going to create, inside this, we want to create another directory, or let me create another directory, and I can just say, I can just call it, for example, Flask app. And I'm going to just bring these files, so static in here, and also the templates. So let's just bring the templates in here, and also the app.py file. So app.py file. And now we have inside the Flask app, we have our project. Okay, so right now if I just run this, nothing will change, and we have our project, and that's working. Okay, so now if I just refresh it, we have the same project. So now what we need to do, first we need to just create a requirements.txt in here, and after that we will push the project to GitHub. So now in here I can just open the terminal, and I can just change the directory to the Flask app, and I can just say pip freeze requirements.txt. So now if you see, we have our requirements.txt. After that, what we want to do, we are going to, because we want to just deploy our project to Elastic Beanstalk, right now we haven't talked about that, we need to create our setup in here, because after that we will do our deployment with the Elastic Beanstalk and also code pipeline. So the first thing is that inside the Flask app, we need to create a folder or directory. We can just call it .eb extensions, so extensions. And inside this, we want to create a file, and I can just call it 01 underscore packages.config. Okay, so 01 packages.config. Okay, and after doing that, we are going to just add these two libraries we want to install, Python 3, and also because we're using MySQL, but there's no problem, we want to just use the MariaDB and it will work. So now we have this. After this, we need to create another file in here, and I can just call it 01 underscore flask.config. And in here we need to just add our configuration for the Flask. And in here we can just paste this. Okay, so we have this in here. We have Elastic Beanstalk application environment, we have the Python path, and also we have WSGI path to app. Okay, so now let's just save it. After that, we have our requirements. Now we can just push this to the GitHub. Okay, so now what I want to do, I'm going to just open GitHub, and let's create a project. I can just Flask AWS, and I want it should be public because I will add the source code in the video description. And we can just click on create repository. So now first we can just say git init, and after that we can just say git add all, and now we can just create a, so we can just paste it in here. We need to just commit that, and after that we can just say git branch main, and we need to just say git remote add origin, and after that we can just push that. Okay, okay, so now we are done, and if I just go here in the code, and now we can see that we have our project, and that's pushed to the GitHub. In the next lesson, we will deploy this project to Elastic Beanstalk. In the previous lesson, we have learned that how we can deploy our Flask project to GitHub. Now it's time to deploy our Flask web app or Flask project to Amazon Elastic Beanstalk with code pipeline. So now, first of all, what is Elastic Beanstalk? Now, with Elastic Beanstalk, you can quickly deploy and manage applications in the AWS Cloud without having to learn about the infrastructure that runs those applications. Elastic Beanstalk reduces management complexity without restricting choice or control. You simply upload your applications, and Elastic Beanstalk automatically handles the details of capacity provisioning, load balancing, scaling, and application health monitoring. And Elastic Beanstalk supports applications developed in different programming languages like Go, Java, .NET, Node.js, PHP, Python, and Ruby. Now, what's Code Pipeline? We will also use Code Pipeline. So now AWS Code Pipeline is a continuous delivery service you can use to model, visualize, and automate steps required to release your software. You can quickly model and configure the different stages of a software release process, and Code Pipeline automates the steps required to release your software changes continuously. So now let's create this practically. So in the AWS console, now the first thing that we need to create our Elastic Beanstalk project. And then here we need to just search for the Elastic Beanstalk. Okay, so you can just search Elastic Beanstalk from here, or so this Elastic Beanstalk, and I can just click on this. So now the first thing is that we need to create an application in Elastic Beanstalk. And after that, we will use this Flask AWS project that we already have pushed to GitHub. So now let's just wait. So you can see that Amazon Elastic Beanstalk, it's end-to-end web application management, and we can just click on create application. Okay. So now in here, the first thing is that we need to give the application name, for example, Flask app, and after giving the application name, we don't need to give anything. So this is the application tags. It's not necessary, but you can give it a unique tag. And now this is the important point. You need to choose the platform. So you can see that there are a bunch of options for you. And we are going to use Python. And after that, this is the platform. Platform branch, you don't need to bring any changes. And this is the platform version. Now this is recommended. And also for the application code, there are two ways. You can directly upload your code. For example, if you have uploaded your project to Amazon S3, then you can choose the public S3 URL. Or if you have a local file, you can just choose that. But because we already have deployed or pushed our project to GitHub, and also I want to show you that how you can use Code Pipeline. By this reason, I want to just use sample application, and I don't want to directly upload the code in Elastic Beanstalk. And instead, I will use the Code Pipeline to get the project from the GitHub, and after that, automatically deploy that to the Elastic Beanstalk. And the best thing is this, that for example, when we're using Code Pipeline, if we bring any changes to our code, then it will automatically deploy that to the Elastic Beanstalk. So let's create application. Now, creating application will take a few moments because it will create EC2 instances, and it will do some setup for us. It will create the security groups. Now, all things will be done by Elastic Beanstalk, and you can see this will take a few minutes, and we need to just wait for this. Okay. But before that, we also want to just open the Code Pipeline. So let me just open that, and we can just go to the Code Pipeline. Now, first we need to just wait for this to be created, the application, and after that we will use Code Pipeline. Okay, so now first let's just wait for this. Alright guys, now the Elastic Beanstalk application has been created. Now if I just go here, so if I just open in a new link, you can see that congratulations, your first AWS Elastic Beanstalk Python application is now running on your own dedicated environment in the AWS Cloud. So now this is the default page. What we want to do now, we want to use our Flask project that we have created. So now the first thing is that we want to create a pipeline. So you can just go to the Code Pipeline, and in here we need to give the pipeline name. So Flask pipeline, for example. And after doing that, we need to just click on next. And in here we need to select the provider. So we are using GitHub version 1. We can just connect to GitHub, to our GitHub project, and we can just say confirm. And after that, it will load the project for us. Now let's just wait. And here our repository, so you can see. And here we want the Flask AWS. Okay, so Flask AWS, and the branch is main branch. Okay, so this is the Flask AWS project that we want to use that. Okay, after that we can just click on next. And now this build provider, now this is the tool of your build project. We don't need this in here, we can just skip the build stage and skip. And in here, you need to just use the deploy provider. So because we are using Elastic Beanstalk, you can see that these are the different AWS services like CloudFormation or Amazon ECS and like this. So we want AWS Elastic Beanstalk. And this is the region. We are inside this region, and our Elastic Beanstalk application is also located in here. So we need to choose application name, that's Flask app. Now this is the Flask app env that we have created in here, and after that the environment name, that's Flask env. Let's just click on next, and this is the review. After that we can just click on create pipeline. Now what it do, it will take the project, our Flask project, from the GitHub. After that, it deployed that automatically to our Elastic Beanstalk. So now let's just wait, and it will take a little bit. You can see, congratulations, the Flask pipeline has been created, and now it's doing its job. Okay, and now it's in progress. All right, now you can see that it succeeded, and succeeded. And now if I just see the information, so there's no problem. And now if I just refresh this, and now you can see that we have our project, and that's in the Elastic Beanstalk. So there's the URL, and now, for example, we can just add a new data. So okay, so now from here we can just add book, and let me just say Elastic Beanstalk, or let me just say, for example, new AWS book, and author. We can just add author, for example, new author, and we can just give the price, add book, and now book added, and you can see that's added. So we can just update this. So for example, I can just say updated book, updated author, so updated author. We can change the price, update book, and now you can see that's added. Okay, so for example, we want to delete this, and I can just click on delete. Okay, and book is deleted. And now if I refresh this, I have just two data. So you can see that how easily we have created our Flask project. We have integrated Amazon RDS, or relational database service, and after that we have deployed our project to Elastic Beanstalk by using code pipeline. In the previous lesson, we have learned that how we can deploy our Flask project to Elastic Beanstalk with code pipeline. Now, this lesson we want to talk about the Route53, Amazon Route53, and how we can integrate a custom domain name from Route53 to our Flask web application. So right now, if you see, this is our Flask project, and that's deployed in the Elastic Beanstalk. Now, the first thing is that you need to search for the Route53. I can just click on this. Now, till now, the services that we have used, they are under the free tier. But for example, if you're using Route53, then for that, you need to buy a domain name. So because I already have some domain names and I don't want to show you the process of buying, so you can just go to the Route53, and from here, you can just search a domain name. For example, I can just search flaskexample.com, and you can just click on check. And it will check the domain names if that's available, and if that was available, then you can just buy that. So you can see in here that flaskexample.com is available, and you can just buy that. Okay, so now I want to just cancel this because I have already two domain. So I want to use this domain name. Now, for example, for the first time when you use when you buy a domain name from Route53, you will get something that's called hosted zone. Okay, so now to use, for example, to map the domain name with the hosted zone, you need to check the name servers. Now, by default, when you buy a domain name from the Route53, you don't need to create any hosted zone because there will be a default hosted zone for you. So for right now, if I just go to the hosted zones, you'll see that I don't have, because I have removed. For example, for the hosted zone, there will be around, for example, around 30 or 50 cents per month that you need to pay for that. So now let's just wait. So right now, if you see, I don't have, let me just check it. And now you can see that in the hosted zone, I don't have anything. Okay, so you can see automatic mode is the current search. Okay, so for the hosted zone, there's no hosted zones created for this account. Now, for example, if you don't have the domain name from the Route53, you can just use another domain, for example, from GoDaddy or Namecheap. There's no problem, and you can use that. But in here, because I will show that also, for example, if you have a domain name from another place, make sure that the name servers of your domain name should be the same as the hosted zone that you want to create. Okay, so, and also, for example, for the first time when you buy a Route53, a domain name from Route53, there will be a default hosted zone that you can use that, and you don't need to, for example, change the hosted zone. But because I have removed the hosted zone, now I want to create a hosted zone in here. You need to give the domain name, so I want to create the hosted zone for this. For example, if you have another domain name from GoDaddy, you can just give the domain name in here. Okay. And after that, this is the description. Now there are two types. We have public hosted zone and we have private hosted zone. Now a public hosted zone determines how traffic is routed on the internet, and a private hosted zone determines how traffic is routed within an Amazon VPS. So we want to use a public hosted zone. We don't need to add any tags in here. You can just click on create hosted zone. So this can take a little bit. Okay, now the hosted zone is created. If I just check this, okay, so now you can see that in here we have record names. Now this is important. You can see that we have name servers. Now these name servers should be the same as the domain name servers. So right now, because I have removed the hosted zone, now this will not be the same as this domain name. I need to change that. So if I go to the domains, and if I just find that domain name, you will see that so let's wait, and this one. So now you can see that if you check in here, you can see that this should be the same, the name servers, as the hosted zone. Okay, so what we need to do, we need to just copy this from here, and I can just go here and paste it in this section, and I can just copy this and paste it in here, and this one, and also this one. And after that, we can just click on update. Okay, and now it will be updated. Also, you will receive an email. Okay, so now we need to create our record. So we can just click on create record, and the first one is without www, and we want to just use, you can see the record type, the record type, we want to just use this one. And after that, we want to just choose alias, and from here we need to just choose the endpoint. So that is alias to Elastic Beanstalk environment, and we need to just choose the region where our Elastic Beanstalk is located, and that is in this region. And now this is our Elastic Beanstalk application. And the routing policy, there are different routing policy. We are going to use simple routing policy, and we can just click on create record. So this is the first record without www. Now let's create another record with the www. So www, and from here we are going to just use a CNAME. And now we need to just give, let me just copy this and paste it in here, and we don't need this HTTP, and it should be like this. Okay, and after that, our time to leave, we can just use our TTL. We want to just use 300, and the routing policy should be simple routing. Let's click on create records. So now we have our two records in here, and now if I just go to and here you can see that this is working. Okay, right now it's not secure, but you can see that we have this, and this is working. If I refresh this, you can see that's working. I can add, so route 53, for example, author Amazon, and price, for example, 50. Let's click on that, and that's added. If I refresh this, okay, now you can see that we have route 53. We can update this, so update it and update, and that's updated. And also we can delete this, okay, and that's deleted. And you can see that how easily we have added a custom domain name to our Flask web app. Now, for example, as I've already mentioned, so this was I had this, for example, domain name from Route53. Maybe you will not have that. You can use another domain name, but just make sure that the name servers of your domain name should be the same as the name servers of the hosted zone. In our previous lesson, we have learned that how we can add a custom domain name from Amazon Route53 to our Flask web application. Now, in this lesson, we want to secure our web application, our Flask web application, and we are going to talk about another concept that is Amazon Certificate Manager. So right now we have our Flask web app, and we have a custom domain name, and that's working. But right now it's not secure. If you see, your connection to the site is not secure. So how we can secure this? So for this, we are using AWS Certificate Manager. We are going to request the certificate, and after requesting the certificate, we are going to add that to our Elastic Beanstalk. So in here, first I want to just say Amazon Certificate Manager. So we can just open that. So certificate. Okay, so we can just go to the certificate manager, and let me just open this. And the first thing is that you need to request the certificate. Now the certificate is free, and you can just add that to your domain. So let's just wait. So from here, you can see that AWS Certificate Manager easily provision, manage, deploy, and renew SSL or TLS certificates. Okay, so we are going to request the certificate, and we want to request a public certificate. We can just click on next, and the domain name. So we need to just give the domain name in here like this. It is like this. Okay, so this is for this one, and also for the www. Also we want to just use a wildcard like this. So after that, we have the validation method, and we want to use DNS validation and the key algorithm. We don't want to change it, and we can just click on request. So now if I just go to the request certificates, so list certificates, you can see that now this is pending validation. We can just click on this, and right now the validation is pending. What we need to do, we need to create record in Route53. Okay, so create these records in Route53. Or for example, if you don't have Route53 domain name from another place, you need to create record in there. Okay, so because we have the Route53 domain, and I can just easily say create records in Route53, and after that we can just create records. So now the records is created, and we need to just wait for a little bit because it will take some time. It will be issued right now. That is pending validation. Okay, so now you can see that's issued, and after that what we need to do, we need to just open our Elastic Beanstalk, and we need to just go to the configuration. Okay, so now in here what we need to do, we need to just use load balancers, and we can just come down from here in the load balancer. We can just click on edit, and from here what we want to do, so right now you can see that we have HTTP protocol port 80, and we want to add another listener. So this time we want to just use port 443, and we want HTTPS, and we don't need to change this. So SSL certificate, this is the certificate that we have that's issued, and you don't need to bring any change in here, and you can just click on add. So it's pending, and okay, so first now we need to apply this, and it will take a little bit. Okay, so for the it's saving configuration changes, and let's wait. So let's wait, it's updating the environment. Okay, now the application is updated. Now if I just go to HTTPS, so let me just say HTTPS, and if I say the domain name, let's just wait, and now you can see that's secure, and we have our connection is secure, and there's no problem. Now the all functionality is working, and SSL and AWS, the author, you can just give the price, add book, and let's add it. And now our connection is secure. And for example, I can just update this, update it, and update, and you can see that's updated. And if I refresh this is the updated one. And also I can delete this, so delete, and you can see that is deleted. So like this, you can work with different concept, from the Flask fundamental concept to working with AWS or Amazon Web Services features. So for the further video, please subscribe to my channel, like the video, and also share this video.